Hi, and welcome to this special edition of the Cloud Wars podcast. I'm joined today by Balazs Molnar, CEO and co-founder of Rabbit, and we're going to dive into the importance of cloud cost management and the challenges companies face when trying to stay within budget while optimizing processes. Balazs, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
To kick things off, could you give us a quick overview of Rabbit, what the company does, your mission, and really what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, so I can give you the boring answer, which would be Rabbit is a cloud cost management tool. I would say the less boring answer, and then that's probably closer to what our vision is with the platform, is that we're simplifying the complexities of cloud and particularly cloud cost management, because we're working as a team with cloud providers and specifically with Google Cloud for close to 15 years now. And about 2.5 years ago, we started to realize a shift from what customers were looking for. Until then, it was all about what can you build on cloud?
Yeah.
How can you migrate my legacy workload to the cloud? And then out of the sudden, most of the requests were, how can you optimize this? Because this is way too expensive. It's a lot more expensive than what we expected. Budgets are spiraling out of what we initially thought when we migrated to the cloud. So we sort of like created this new business line of just helping customers to optimize. But that was a very manual process. We had to send down our best software architects, identifying where the challenges are. We were looking at logs, working with the engineering teams very closely. And then the end result was like a one-time optimization. So we were thinking like that has to be a better way than this, because obviously this is not good for the client. It's a one-time thing. It's very expensive. And then usually it's not the most efficient way of doing things. And then it wasn't good for us because those engineers that we had to actually assign to these tasks were not super keen on doing it, to be put it bluntly. So we started to look around in the market, and then we realized that there is probably 1 million different kind of platforms and tools that were saying that they're doing cloud cost optimization and helping companies to save on their cloud costs. Now, the problem was that they were actually not aiming the engineering teams. So we kind of like, as an engineering first company, what we realized is that it's great that FinOps was a new thing. And then it was great that there's so many tools, legacy and new wave tools, but they were not aiding the engineering team. So it was kind of like a realization, like you're taking your car to the body shop and the people there, they didn't have the right tool to understand why your car is consuming double the amount of gas that it's supposed to do. So that's kind of like, that's when, the light bulb went up, and then like, we have to build a tool set for the engineering teams in order for them to be really, really able to optimize. Now, the problem is the cloud has so much depth. I always like to think about it as an iceberg. Yeah. You're basically looking at the tip. That's what you see. That's what the cloud vendors are allowing you to see. Mm-hmm. But the real opportunity lies always under the water. So you gotta have to go very, very deep, and in order to be able to deliver those insights, you had to be laser focused on each of the cloud services and then potentially on single vendors. That's why we started to focus on Google Cloud, because we knew Google Cloud the best. Yeah. So we knew that this is where we can actually really go down under the water and understand what is the real opportunity there. And then the second thing that we realized was that engineers actually don't want to deal with this until they are getting the task of like, you gotta have to cut the cost. Yeah. And then the problem is that they have so many other things to do. Obviously, their main task is not about optimization. Their main task is to build your platform, is to build and manage your systems. It's not to constantly looking back and see if it works in the most optimal way. They don't want to do it. So in order to be able to really keep the cloud operation optimal, we had to automate most of the tasks. So that's kind of like how Rabbit came to be. And then what it is right now, it's an automated cloud cost optimization platform that helps particularly the engineering teams to not just keep their cost at bay and just eliminate the wastage that they're generating, but to be as efficient as possible as an engineering team.
Fantastic. Thank you for that overview, Balazs. And sticking with engineering, because that's a clear focus for you there at Rabbit. Traditionally, engineering teams have been responsible for monitoring IT spend, but I'm interested into how that landscape's evolving in the cloud era. What are some of the biggest challenges that these teams face, especially given how common overspend has become?
Yeah, that's a great question, because traditionally they were tasked to oversee, but they weren't actually tasked to optimize IT spends. So if you think back before the cloud, I don't remember that much because I'm not that old. But like if you think about like how IT or enterprise IT was managed in the 70s, 80s, 90s even, it was basically all about how many racks do I need to buy, what sort of software do I need to put on, and that were the boundaries. This is where the engineers had to work. If I had 5,000 racks, that was my compute capacity. It was very hard to overspend because then it means that your procurement had to buy more machines, right, physically, and deliver it into your basement. So cloud, obviously, engineering teams oversaw the cost, and then they were responsible telling what sort of software and what sort of hardware you had to purchase. But it was primarily the procurement and the finance team's job to get the best deal out of the vendors. Now it completely changed with cloud, because if you think about it, it's basically a buffet. The engineers arrived, and then they can just choose and eat as much as they want. There's some sort of budget, obviously, and there is some sort of estimation of how much you're going to spend, but there are really no boundaries. And a good example of that are like anomalies. Anomalies happens all the time because, you know, some of the services just wrongly configured, and they only realize 2-3 days later. Finance and procurement don't have any overseer of that. It's only the engineering teams that can actually understand. And at the same time, also only the engineering teams can actually fix the problematic parts if the architectures were not properly set up. So obviously building enterprise IT or just in general IT is not like building a house. If you build a house and your contractor is not putting enough windows, or there are no windows on the house, you will see that right away. Now, if that code was not properly, or the underlying architecture was not properly built up, or it wasn't the right discount scheme weren't chosen the right way, which are, by the way, done all by the engineering teams, then you won't see it, because it's not like a house where you look at it and then like, oh my God, there are no windows. Where's the door? So you don't see it. And then that's the problem, that traditionally it's not enough anymore to just oversee the spending by the engineering team. And it's not enough that the finance teams and particularly like FinOps practices to take responsibility and control over how to optimize cloud cost. So in terms of where it evolves and where it is have to be as the responsibility lie, it has to be with the engineering teams, because they are the only ones who can actually properly optimize and manage cloud cost. And this is kind of like what I like to sort of think of this as like a FinOps trap as well.
Yeah.
Because if your company has a FinOps practice and you think it's enough, you walked into a trap because you think that you're doing enough. But it's physically impossible, because if your engineering teams don't have the right tool set, if they don't have the right understanding of where wastage are happening, then the FinOps teams or finance teams or procurement, they can't do anything because they don't have the understanding. It's again like taking your car to the body shop and ask them to fix it. Yeah. But without the right tool set or understanding, they're just gonna say, it looks fine to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was a great use of analogies there as well, Balazs. I particularly like the idea of this, the cloud buffet, where, where everything's on.
Yeah.
That was a really, thank you for summarizing that. So Balazs, how is Rabbit helping to address these challenges that you've talked about? And what kind of support are you offering engineering teams when it comes to optimizing cloud costs? And also, who else would you say are the key players in this space from a C-suite perspective?
So if you think about cloud again as an iceberg, what you're getting as an information of the cloud console, or even for most of the FinOps tools, is really what's above the water. What we are helping the engineering team is to understand the full picture. What's under the water? What are the main cost drivers per cloud services? So for example, when it comes to BigQuery on GCP, one of the main cost drivers on BigQuery is our queries. So querying drives most of the cost, and Google and the Cloud Console won't provide you a query level view. So we provide query level understanding, query level recommendations in terms of how much you can save, and then query level optimization as well. So that's one example. Basically, think about the platform itself as something that gives you the entire picture of what's happening in your cloud per cloud service. Now, this is very important because obviously this is kind of like the generic idea. We are focusing on Google Cloud because we believe that it is very, very hard to do it on a multi-cloud perspective. So we want to do Google Cloud right at this point of time. And that's particularly important for the second layer of the platform, which is automation. So as I said, insights are important. It's very important for you to understand the entire iceberg, especially what's under the water. But what is even more important is that how you can actually free up those engineering teams from manually optimizing these cloud services. And some of these optimizations are not even possible on a manual basis. So just referring back to BigQuery, one of the problem is that if you choose reservations, which is kind of like the discount scheme at BigQuery, you're going to use a thing called autoscaler, which the problem is that it scales up too fast and stays up too long, minimum 60 seconds, even if you're using 10 seconds. So there is enormous amount of waste that is generated. This is across actually other providers as well, but for BigQuery, this is a particular problem that we were able to solve with automating the autoscaler and scaling up for whatever you need instead of the minimum 60 seconds. So with that, we can actually cut this wastage by 70%. And we see that a lot of our customers, they are actually generating 50-60% of their entire BigQuery spend as waste. They don't use it, and they don't even understand the severity of it. And this is again back in the analogy that we used before, that it is basically you can't see it because it's not like not having windows in the house. So our automation features are very important. That's where we actually bring the biggest value to our customers, because these are things that they turn on, and then the wastage is going to be eliminated. Basically, you turn on our automation for this BigQuery autoscaler problem. The next day, your spending is going to go down by 30-35%.
Wow.
and it's going to remain that level until you turn it off.
Wow.
Now, obviously, spoiler, none of our customers are turning it off because it doesn't make sense. So automation is super important. This is where we are also taking the tool. Insights are great, is very important. In fact, insights should be coming out of the box from the cloud providers. For a number of reasons, they don't. But if you want to look at it as a holistic solution, automation is the key value driver that we bring to our customers.
Fantastic. Thank you, Balazs. Now, I think what would be really nice to end our conversation would be a customer story, if you have one that kind of exemplifies how your technology is being used and some of the benefits that your customers were seeing.
Yeah, there is a quite interesting one. I like to say this. It's a recent one with the global e-commerce player that we started to recently work with, and their problem was exactly on the autoscaler that I mentioned. They were not aware of it. They came to us because they wanted to have a better understanding of what's happening under the hood, again, like what's under the water. And then we asked them to run a simple query on their BigQuery reservation to understand if they might have actually generating waste. And these companies a very big Google Cloud customer, so they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a monthly basis just on BigQuery. And they run the query, and then to their surprise, we kind of knew it because this is something that we see across the board, but to their surprise, 60% of their reserved reservations were idle. So basically, that's one of the big, I like to think of it as like a promise that never been fulfilled, that in cloud you pay for what you use. It's not true. You pay for what you booked. So these guys booked then like 60% more than what they actually were looking to use. So we started to work with them, applied the automation that I mentioned earlier, and we're around close to $3 million saving to them, which is very, very interesting because their profit ratio is somewhere around $15 million a year. So we are able to add 20% to their bottom line without them have to actually change anything in their business model. It's just right that. And I think this is super important. And this is what I'm having discussions with CFOs and CEOs of SaaS companies and e-commerce companies and companies where cloud is actually a very important item in the budget. They need to look at this because they might be able to increase their margin by a big margin just by actually running their cloud operations better. And I think in the longer term, this will be super important for the cloud vendors as well, because we see this is also, even though we all know the news that like cloud vendors are growing like 30+% on a year-over-year basis, but we also started to see cracks in the system where companies are actually decide to move out of cloud because it's too expensive to them. But the reality, it might not have to be that expensive. It's just not optimized. And I think this example with this e-commerce company that I mentioned earlier amplifies the whole notion that if cloud costs are a major budget item, you gotta have to equip your engineers with the right tool set. Otherwise, you might be actually wasting a lot of your budgets on things that should not be there, like idle resources.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Balazs, thank you so much. That was a great practical example of what success looks like with Rabbit and a great way to end our conversation. And thank you again for taking the time to join us today. Cloud spend's definitely an underreported issue, so it's been really good to shine a light on that today. And to our viewers, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Bye.